The best entrepreneurs and leaders, they love what they do. Startups are generally have this more like exponential curve where the first, depending on the company, 6 months to a year, sometimes more, value creation is doing something good for people. You don't want to try to be unique and innovative in everything. Basically all business really is, it's just doing those things over and over. So when I think of business, it's keep that path intact, right? It's okay to kind of stray, but you want to come back and then make your way. I'm like a system junkie, whether I like it or not. I love riding my bike all around the city.
So what is your job title, would you say?
Business consultant, strategic advisor, sometimes business coach, and sometimes fractional executive, fractional COO, depending on the extent of the relationship I have with the client or partner.
Yeah, so business consultant. That's kind of the over general term.
Yeah,
right?
It's general. It's actually something I'm like honing and articulating better right now, you know?
What types of businesses would you ideally want to work with? Or do you think like you are most fit for?
The best businesses for me to work with are in a little bit of a sweet spot between they've already know how they do what they do, right? They're not like so early in the development process that they're still trying to find their basic identity of like how they sell, who they sell to, what their products and services look like. But they're also not too far developed that they're an enterprise or close to an enterprise. So they have kind of a innovative side to them, an innovative angle that like, hey, we are not just a cut out of the same thing everybody else is doing. We're not just another law firm. We're not just another professional services or whatever company, but we're in a market, we have a definition, but we want to be a little different. We want to grow differently. We know that there's different ways to do things. So it's a combination of, wanting to be better and grow and scale and maybe do something specific like sell the company or raise capital and want to find the right way to do that for them and do it effectively and efficiently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're catching these like not startup companies, but one step past that. They're already established as a business, but they haven't taken like that next step of how do we like become a big boy?
Yeah. Like I think that like I always think of startups and small businesses as kind of different types of companies that are early on in their stage of development, generally both of them. Or small business, maybe not. Small businesses can be very developed, but small businesses generally have like a linear growth path, which is like, hey, this has been done before. We generally know how to do more of what's being done. It's not like very discovery oriented. They don't have to do that much learning. They can start selling and get out there right away. But in some cases, those businesses are like, hey, we want to go to the next level faster. We want to find how to become more of a startup in how we do things, be more innovative. Startups are generally have this more like exponential curve where the first, depending on the company, 6 months to a year, sometimes more, they're losing money, they're spending resources, and they're really focused on learning what their audience needs and how to be different from what's already out there. And then things can grow very fast because they're unique and people, when they find a good product market fit and find the way to scale, then they have usually much higher potential to grow very large because they have more blue ocean to operate in.
Right. So that's like they have some kind of innovation in their business where it's like versus a small business that is kind of following a blueprint, like a bookstore or something
often,
like that.
But it's like
they just are going to follow the path.
But it's like, I look at it like they both really kind of like need to balance both, because if you're a startup and your business model, you figuring out your business model, you don't want to try to be unique and innovative in everything, because then it's a lot of energy. You're spending a lot of time and energy doing that. I mean, it's kind of like resource expensive to be learning instead of just applying. So, a company that is a startup and they want to be unique in terms of like the platform that they offer or something like that, they might choose to say, hey, we're not going to be unique in how we bring on new employees, because that's not where it's going to be valuable for us to differentiate from others in our market, And meanwhile, like a small business that's got more of a traditional linear path, it makes sense for them to sometimes say, hey, in this area of the business, we know this is where we're unique and we stand out against other people. That's where we want to innovate. Mm-hmm. That's where we want to be different and focus all our resources on really standing out and being the best in that area. And you can't, you don't want to just follow the mold of everybody else, because that's your kind of where you're putting the stake in the ground of being better and different. Yeah. So I think it's a balance for both traditional startups. Startups and small businesses to balance like where to innovate, where to use tried and true methods. To execute.
Yeah, that made me think of this Jordan Peterson quote from. I used to be really into Jordan Peterson, and he said something that was like, you shouldn't avoid doing something everyone else is doing unless you have a good reason to.
Yeah, that's good. Exactly. It's like there's this kind of, it's not the curse of innovation, because that's another term but it's like when you're very innovative, you don't want to have to be unique in everything, because it's like reinventing the wheel for no good reason to do it.
You can't like start from zero on everything. It's like learn from stand on the shoulders of giants.
It's an easy way to burn yourself out as a company.
Yeah.
And a lot of like startups, especially here in Austin, have this like innovation DNA. So, it can be difficult to not apply that mindset to everything that you do. Do
you see that happen often in companies where they are trying to be better in every single thing?
Yeah. I think it's a yes. And not really having a really good idea and like clarity on where specifically they're different, and to choose to be intentional about where to focus innovation and resources within the business on that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes maybe a general idea, and that goes into the strategic planning and in kind of a broad way, almost unintentionally. But I think it comes out a lot of times in like budgeting and stuff. They'll see what's going on and where they might be behind somebody else, or where they think they should be doing better. And it's like they'll throw a lot of resources at that thing potentially, but it's like, it's without that intentional thought process of whether or not they want to be better in that particular area, whether that's strategically beneficial for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's sometimes the decision process can be based off a lot of different stuff, like whoever's making that decision, or what the market is telling them, or what their customers are telling them, or different things like that.
Yeah.
It's good to be intentional about it.
Yeah. So you were briefly before this talking about businesses as like, having almost a personality.
Yeah.
How do you see that come out in different businesses?
Well, like I studied organization theory and organizational behavior like years ago. And that's where it first kind of like clicked. I saw all these ways that as organizations get bigger, like if you think of large enterprises, they move and they have components and divisions, like very similar to how people have systems and executive decision-making control, and how they rely on, you hear a lot that cash flow is the lifeblood of an organization. It's really true in a lot of ways. It's like you have to have this flow of cash, this activity, and if that stops, then it's like everything else stops until that gets figured out a lot of times. And there's just so many kind of characteristics that overlap. And there are different kind of like patterns and systems that are common to all businesses. Like people have, generally speaking, everybody has a skeletal system, a nervous system, an executive decision-making, a digestive system. It's not those exact things, obviously, but businesses have a lot of similar. Do you want me to go into that? I can kind of like talk about
it.
Okay. So I think of like, there's a few major components to like what this defines a business. So it's like you have the people of the business, and how do you attract people to what you do? So, I mean, at a very basic level, any business, even if it's just I sell one thing to one type of customer and I'm a single solopreneur, single person that does it, right? A single service provider. You have to attract them, right? You have to do something that makes them say, I want that thing. And then there has to be some compensation for that allows you to keep doing what you do for them, right? So that's how do you attract people to your cause in some way or another? And then there's the capture of value part, which is how do you go about getting the stuff that you need to operate, right? What's your pricing look like? What's your billing and invoicing process look like? How are you priced versus other people in your market? Do you collect on a regular basis? What are the other types of capital that you need? Are you really relationship dependent, right? And then operationally speaking, it's every business kind of generally follows one of a few different generic configurations of how they do what they do. So there's traditionally, it's a product-based business relies on inbound logistics of new material. Then they perform some operations on that material. Then they have outbound logistics to get it to people. And then there's sales and marketing activities, so making people aware of it. And then there's fulfillment and customer service activities. So, but if you're a service-based business, the process looks a little different. It's more about identifying problems and solving them and testing how well those solutions worked. And if you're a platform type business, then it's more about putting people in the right places and managing relationships and connecting them and managing your infrastructure as a business. So each one of those types has a few main general process categories that they do in some way or another. They usually call it something different based off of who they are, but you can use it to look at what's the general configuration of the business and then say where to prioritize, right? So again, for a product-based business, it's getting stuff in the door, working on it, getting it out the door, selling it and marketing it and servicing it. And that's going to be the case in every product-based business, more or less. But, company A they might notice and say, we're really good at the operations side, right? What we can do to improve this raw material that anybody else can get their hands on is where we're really unique, right? And we ship it out just like everybody else, and we're not particularly great at selling it or marketing it, whatever that might be. But so then it's your differentiator, that's where you want to double down on being really effective in that space. Do you know, is this, I'm not sure how I'm doing on articulating.
No. I'm curious, what is something that the layperson can take from the way a business works? What is something that most people don't understand about business that could actually help them in their day-to-day?
Yeah, that's a good question. Something that the layperson doesn't understand about business that could help them in their day-to-day.
Right. Like someone who's they don't want to start a business.
Yeah. Okay, so when I think about that, the day-to-day of what's really important to me is know your audience, know who is on the other end of the thing you're trying to do, right? And if it's somebody if you're trying to sell or whatever your job to do is, knowing who is on the other end of it and knowing what's important to them, right? What they value and what is something that makes them go, oh, I really would like to know more about that and maybe try that, or maybe be an everyday customer of that or be involved with that, versus have them say, oh, that doesn't really sound like something I'm interested in, or I don't want to be involved with that, and send me and get me as far away from this as possible, right? And that's different for different people, but if you think about them and put yourself in their shoes, and in some cases, really flesh that out, right? Oh, this person is in this role. If I was in their role, if I was in their position, and sometimes I am in that position, so tapping into that part of me that does that. What do I care about when I'm thinking about that? What are the things that frustrate me and give me a pain in the butt for me to deal with and I'd rather not deal with? And what are the things that make me feel relief and make me feel comfortable and make me feel like I'm living my best life or just happy or whatever you want to say, right? And then the more you have an understanding of those things, and if you just care about the well-being of the person of the subject of that, then that goes a long way in terms of relationship and making things more interactive and engaging between the two of you, know? I mean, I relate it back like a lot to general kind of mental activity. Every day we make so many decisions. We're kind of these value perception machines, right? We go around on a daily basis. What should I be doing? What do I think I want to do? What could I do instead? What do I want to eat for lunch today? Do I want to call John or do I want to wait till later to call him? All these things, you're kind of making these little decisions in your head about whether or not it's something you want to do at all, something you feel like you have to do, something you maybe want to do later, right? So, and those same general decision-making mechanics, they apply in business as well as in life, So for me, it's knowing how I work and knowing how people I want to interact with and want to serve and who I want them to do better, being aware of it, and then serving that is kind of how I ground what I do and how I work.
Yeah. Have you read the book Sapiens?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I read that, Yuval Noah Harari talks about like what a business really is.
Yeah.
Because I never thought about it, and I read this maybe 2 years ago now. But yeah, he's like, what is Apple?
Yeah.
Is it the phone? Like, no, not really. Yeah. Is it the store?
Yeah.
No. Is it the factory? Like, not really. Is it the people that work there?
Right.
No, because they can come and go.
Yeah.
And it's still gonna be Apple. And so he really digs into like what a business is. And it's a legal entity. It's like a person that's not a person.
What's your interpretation from the book? Could you summarize what Yuval's concept of what a business is?
Yeah, it seems to be an agreement among people. It's like something in the shared consciousness of like this thing exists because we all believe it does. Yeah. Like if everyone forgot about Apple, it would no longer exist. It literally wouldn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that concept for business too. I think from the overriding like takeaway from Sapiens that I got is there's like shared stories, these shared concepts of things. And that's like, my guess is that's what he is talking about makes humans, what makes us different, that we have this ability to kind of have the more complex language and ability to share stories and like build off of them. It's all those things, I think it's all those things. And like if we were two, infrastructure people having this conversation and we were talking about what Apple is, then maybe that would be the topic of our conversation. Like they're so great at being able to utilize their offshore manufacturers and be able to get it to all the people they need to, it's like, that's not what Apple's not. They're not, they're not that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this, like, it's a lot of different things. It's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I like to think that a business I envision like a business kind of in a wilderness setting. Okay. And just like any person might be, but they're like a collection. Like imagine that you take a group of people and plop them in the wilderness, right? They have a idea of where they want to get to and a set of things on them, like like tools maybe, and assets like food and beverages and maybe different skill sets. Maybe this guy can hunt and maybe this person is really good at gathering food and whatever. So they have these different sets of things, right? When a business is like pictured in that setting and they do something that creates value for people, right? And then they capture some value through that process, so they like get paid for it. And then they put that back into their operations in some way to do what they need to do to create more value for people. Okay? So it's like create value, capture value, deliver value. Do stuff for people that makes them want to work with you. get stuff from them like money or other capital sources that you use to grow and fuel your operations so that you can do more stuff for people, right? That becomes this like cycle. This becomes this like you boom, boom, boom. That's what basically all business really is. It's just doing those things over and over. So when you think about in the future, like your vision of like, what do you want to, it's like, well, I look at three things. What impact do you want to have on people, and who are those people? Right? What do you want to collect and grow? What's the vision for yourself? What do you want to become? And what do you want to do? What do you want your operations to be? So it's like, when I think of business, it's who are all the people and what happens to them? What do you have, and what stuff really? What do you make up, and what do you do? What do you do with your time? That's my kind of like best concept at like what is a business to me. And it's going through that process. A lot of businesses, and this is like a big thing, they'll have like a vision and they'll say, we want to get, it's kind of can be very isolated. It can be, we want to get to $10 million in annual revenue, right? And maybe they'll have a picture in their mind of how they're going to do that. They're going to bring together these different types of people and they're going to play some role in that process, right? But if they're not intentional about how they're going to do what they do, so that they're putting the resources that they get into that with intention, it's kind of like making progress toward their goal, but in a way that they didn't intend it to. So when they get there, they look very different than they thought they were going to look at that point, right? They're like, well, we got the 10 million revenue, but we're not strategically in the place we want to get to because the business isn't organized at all how we expected it to be. And we're maybe don't really know what our values are, what's important to us, and how we want to prioritize things. And maybe we're serving this whole other customer base than we had intended to serve, and we kind of followed the money to get to this place, but now it's like this segment of the audience instead of this other one. So it's like, it's a kind of listening and action exercise. It's like, wait, as you make your way through the forest to your goal, it's like, be aware of your surroundings, but then also be intentional about where you want it to get to and how you want it to get there, so that you can keep that path intact, right? It's okay to kind of stray, but you want to come back and then make your way.
Do you want to have an idea of that ahead of time?
Yeah.
Is there something you look for in the people specifically? Like if you're talking with the CEO or founder, is there anything you look for in them in terms of personality traits?
That's like good for me, or
that's going to be a good business.
That's going to be a good business?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. The best, I have an occasional consulting partner named Scott, and I haven't talked to him in a couple months, but I'm a huge fan of his. He's just fantastic. And I originally met him he was representing a company that he was raising capital for, and I was representing a family office, and that was the introduction of how we were gonna, whether or not there might be something to come from it, right? And he had a fantastic balance in that conversation. I remember that him being really impressive because he had a lot of the things. There's a lot of different things to like be what it takes to be like a really good, to represent a business really well. Mm-hmm. And so he had a calm and patience in the conversation, right? Any question that we had for him about the business, whatever type it was, he just was very, he was responsive to it and able to like take all those questions. So I think that having a firm grounding, right, and that that needs can change and questions can change, and just to be able to authentically answer those questions shows a lot of confidence in what you're representing, your business, right? It's like, we are what we are, and what can I help you know about it? He was also really knowledgeable. He knew how the business model worked, having a good understanding of the model, having an intention to me, it's urgency is kind of I like to look for urgency in, I know what I'm doing is really important. And so it's not like it's a game that doesn't matter. We need to win. We need to do what we do because it's important and I believe in it, and that's what we're going to do. But not necessarily a like contrived, busyness can take you the opposite direction, right? If you're just involved in everything and trying to do so many different things, then it's a lack of focus, and that can be a challenge.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a lot of different things, you know, and relationship management and knowing who your different people are and what your business needs and who's in charge of those spaces, and having trust in them to be able to focus on what's your thing, right? Because even people at the top of very large organizations, they have a good idea of where they really add the most value and what's the best place for them to be spending their time and resources. And they have other people that focus in the other areas of business that things need to get done. But if they put all that burden on themselves, they'll burn out, and they're trying to do other people's jobs, right? They need to let them do their own job, but just have insight into what's happening. And yeah, I think when you manage that very well, and you can communicate the purpose and the intention of what you're doing, so that everybody's on board with that stuff and how you're going to do it, then that's where really amazing things happen.
Yeah, that's huge. Having trust in the people in the company, and a trust in like the business itself.
Yeah.
There's some famous Warren Buffett quote where he talks about like, I forget what it was. It's something about like he'll only invest, or like you should build a company so an idiot can run it, because one day one will.
Yeah.
It's that whole idea of like,
I haven't heard that, but I like that.
yeah, having trust in the business itself and the systems, and that people will get things done, and not needing to micromanage everything.
In the early days of a business, like when you're growing it, you don't really have much of a choice unless you get a lot of great investment and you've done this really well before, that you can abbreviate that part really fast. Then most of the time it's a small number of people wearing a lot of different hats, and you kind of got to do what you got to do to get the wheels turning, right? But as that continues to go and the business continues to grow, then things get a little bit more specialized. The person who's right for that spot goes there, and blah, blah, blah. And if you want to continue to grow and still be the type of person that like does everything and is involved with everything, you're just not going to be able to.
Yeah.
It's just too much work that needs to get done. So the solution for that is systemization. And to say, okay, this is our big business system. That's maybe these 5 different, totally different almost things we do. And then each one of those has their own organization to them, right? It's like the more you can systematize in a repeatable way and pull the manual, decision making out of the pieces, that gives you the ability to grow it out more,
Have you like done any of this in your personal life, systematizing stuff?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm like a system junkie, whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
I have very system thinking, and I'm always kind of reworking my own systems to manage my life and my business, and I've done it with businesses, creating and growing systems. And my first job out of college was for Accenture in system design, and I was working for big financial institutions and it all kind of is a abstraction of the level of systemization. So while what we were focused on was just one part of their whole system of their organization, it's like, okay, now we're looking at their financial system and a new underwriting or claims processing system. Sorry, got distracted.
Reba came in.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of different. I do a lot of system designing.
Yeah, that stuff is very interesting to me too. Like a part of me wants like an optimized life where like everything just happens perfectly.
Yeah.
That's also a big thing we've talked about this in the past on this podcast, but people with the most willpower actually use it the least. Like when you see the most disciplined people, it's usually because they have just set up their life in such a way that they naturally do those things.
Are you familiar with Atomic Habits?
Yes, of course.
I'm a big fan of that, and I think it plays in a lot that kind of environment design, right? It's like be good to yourself, set yourself up for success, and because we're naturally humans, we want the easy thing, we want the thing that is most comfortable and beneficial like right now, and we discount the value of future stuff, especially if we have to work for it. So yeah, I really love that that book. And I was gonna mention something else, but now it slipped my mind. With are you familiar with like a Enneagram personality model?
That was at the thing.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. As I was doing that for that, like I've done it in the past, but there's so many things, you're kind of trying to stay up to date on so many things. I've like found this before, but I'm an explorer personality type. Curiosity is one of my highest values. I love learning. I love like being grounded and connected, and then just adding value from that place and being in that space. But I almost have this like catch-22 with discipline and
I just bought that book. Sorry.
Order.
I was like, where is it?
Which book?
The Catch-22.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Sorry, continue.
That's a good book too. Yeah, it's like so through that process, I learned a little bit more about myself, that if I'm in a tough part of life, if I'm like feeling stressed, my go-to response to that is like, I need more kind of disciplined systems, right? I need to put more into like my system to tell me what to do and when, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like these putting too many boundaries and reins on things that becomes more oppressive. It doesn't help me. It just kind of like makes me feel bound, and I don't like feeling bound.
Yeah.
So it's more of a finding the right way to have the tools support me so that I can be grounded, right? I'm at my best when I'm not thinking about all the stuff I have to do and feeling like I'm behind on everything and distracted. I'm at my best when everything's taken care of and that things are good, and then I could be here right now and do the thing that is the focus of my attention now.
Yeah, I've had that in the past where like things get too oppressive, where it's like I have to do this, and I'm like, fuck, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
I know, it's like.
And then you get caught in a routine where it's just like you lose that kind of opportunist mindset of like, oh, what can happen? What, like, the day doesn't feel as open as it used
to. Totally. And it's also it kind of, anxiety can increase, and then I'm working on this thing that's important, and something during that thing, because I'm always making these connections, reminds me of this other thing that needs to get done, or this other thing that I could do that would help make things better. And I'm more susceptible to the attaching to that other thing and thinking on that, right? Because my brain is just kind of like in that space of don't let things fall through the cracks. Manage all these things. If my brain is constantly feeling like it needs to manage all these things, then it's susceptible to like, oh, okay, like figure that thing out real quick, and then I'm just figuring all these things out, and they're not getting done, so it's not really helpful, you know. But when I'm in the more balanced, grounded place of not trying to do too much, having the right things in the right place and a time for things, then it gives me more kind of freedom and comfort and patience to focus on the thing that I'm doing. And something comes up, oh yeah, that other thing. Yeah, I know that thing that has to be done, but that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm doing this thing. And so just like letting it go, letting it kind of like not take over, my mental space of what to do right now, or what to think about.
Yeah, that's been kind of a goal of mine for like a while now. Is like, how can I just focus on what is in front of me?
Yeah.
Like all the time.
Yeah.
Just whatever I'm doing, that's where my focus is.
I've thought a lot recently about the relationship between intuitive energy and cognitive problem solving thinking energy and place, and it's like this give and take. And
I just read a book about that, Blink by Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh yeah, I haven't read Blink. I've like kind of like gotten familiar with it, and I think
it's old. I didn't realize it's like 20 years old now.
I think he wrote another one recently.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost exactly what you're talking about.
Blink is the one where he's like, I think I read like maybe the first chapter or something, but it starts with how people who do like, what's it called? Forging, right? Or they're authenticating, that they're often more effective when they just like intuitively can tell if it's a fake or not, right?
Yes. It's the story of someone brought like a statue to a museum and was like, well, we'll give you this for $10 million.
Right.
And they got all these experts to come check, and they like dated it. And they're like, okay, we think it's right.
Right.
And then they had like a few people that would look at it and they're like, something's off.
Yeah.
This, like, don't buy this.
It's like the sniff test. It's like, it doesn't, it's just something.
And they could just feel it, something about it.
Well, it's, I love that because it's also, I mean, I also think that I want to believe that because I just know it's like, it can be so much. I mean, you can overanalyze. There's no end to the amount of analysis that can be done on something like that, right? So, and I guess just a little short story. I used to do a lot of market research, and market research was how I identify myself as a professional. And we would consult and coach like healthcare executives on the result. Maybe we'd go through a bunch of different messages they had for their product line or several different visual aids, and we would do a lot of work. I mean, these were a lot $100,000 projects to like really do a good deep analysis on it and make very well thought out recommendations. And at the end of that, I remember being in this stage where it's like I could see that they would just make decisions from their gut a lot of times, and that like that bothered me in a way. Like at that time, that was like, what's the point of doing all this research, right? If you're just gonna disregard it and then make it whatever decision you feel like, right? But at some point, like within the last like 10 years, my opinion on that changed. And I think this is a big thing with AI as this comes. It's like we humans, if a human is making the decision, it's always going to be based off of whether or not we want to make the decision, right? Or what we want to decide. Because even if you have all the evidence in the world telling you to pick A and not B, you're picking A because you want to agree with that. You know what I mean? You want to agree with the data that's out there. And so, and the other part of it is that like our intuition, that part of our brain that's subconsciously taking all the different pieces of information, all the data that we have available, and saying this is the right one. Trust me. Like I feel that this is the right one. It's coming from almost like a divine place. Like it's really good at synthesizing those things to begin with. And I don't know. I believe in the trusting that and giving that power and listening to that side of things and balancing it with, like, I kind of think it's the role of my thinking brain is to collect information to help that instinctual side of me to like to have better responses to what to like and what not to like. You know what I mean?
Right. Because the gut reflex or the gut decision is only as valuable as like the data that you've been fed throughout your life up to that point.
Right.
And so, it's only a good decision if you have a reason to have it be a good decision. But also I think, and he makes a good point in the book too, which is like fairly straightforward decisions are like good to do cognitively, like think through it. But as soon as there are too many different moving things, then gut decision seems to work better.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I think it's just because we underestimate how powerful our subconscious mind is. Like that's the majority of the compute in our brain is hidden beneath the surface.
I like that.
And we just get like kind of the little flutterings of thoughts as they pop up.
Right.
But like actually thinking through things in our conscious brain is not as effective.
Yeah.
Like you can't hold that many things in there.
Yeah.
Whereas the subconscious is just
totally. I mean,
crazy.
Right. I mean, I like the way you put that. Right. It's like, I think I grew up thinking so much that my thinking brain was my brain. That was everything. That's like, everything comes from there. That's the most important thing. Analyze, make decisions from there. But it's just one piece of the puzzle, and it just can be very self-limiting to like rely on. I heard something kind of somewhat recently. It's like that, like over-analysis, that struggle, that kind of always need to like figure stuff out, and is kind of like paddling your boat, right? And it's like measured in how fast can you paddle, and you're working your strength. And it's like, okay, it's not bad to be able to paddle. But if you really want to go further, if you want to be able to do more, then you need to sail and put up, and that's like, that's more about reading the winds and, and letting the flow take you to where you're supposed to go, You kind
of have to trust a little in yourself.
You got to trust a little. Yeah.
So you got to sit back and relax and be like, okay, now
it's going.
And that I've learned that in podcasting. I was just thinking about this. Like, there's like hosting a podcast. I feel like I always need to be ready. I always have to like be thinking of something. But when I can sit back and just be like, something will come to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And going with the sail of just like trusting that my subconscious mind will come up with the right thing to say.
Yes. I found that's one of the reasons why I think surrounding yourself with good people is so important. And good people for you. Like, I don't have a specific dimension that everybody needs to follow. It's like not wealthy people or this kind of people necessarily, but because I've been in situations where people around me, my partners, really trusted me and really respected me, and it gave me that confidence too.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me feel like that we're doing great work. And that reminds me of another thing. But from that place, when you have that like confidence and trust, that's like, to have people around you who believe in you too is like infectious, and it gives you, it's like, yeah, I got this. I know how to do this stuff. It'll figure itself out. And then maybe do a little bit of, it's not bad to think through it, but it's like a data gathering exercise. It's not a reliance on, it's not like, if I don't have X and Y, Z, everything's going to fall apart, or I won't be prepared, or bad things will happen. It's like, I want to think through these things to help so that in the flow, I'll just have more good stuff to feed off of, and more, thoughts to talk about. Yeah. We talked about the different like personal motivators through that, and having that like self belief that I do good things for people and I'm capable in doing that. And it's like, as a human, it's like, what else do you really have to expect of yourself other than being intentional and effective at just being a good human, just being good for other people, right? Doing good things that people you care about. It's like, that's a source for me of that I can come back to. That's like, I know I have good intentions. I know that I want good, positive things for people, and having that in my kind of back pocket,
mm-hmm.
is a big source for me of reminding me that I don't have to have everything figured out every time, that get through hard times, that it'll work itself out some way,
Yeah, being okay with your intentions, like, or knowing, being aware of your intentions. This came up for me a lot when I was like a year and a half ago. I went through this process where I like approached a bunch of just random girls. Like, I would just do this regularly because I was terrified of it. And so I was like, let me figure this out.
Yeah.
And there were so many fears of like, oh, she's going to think I'm creepy. She's going to feel uncomfortable. She's going to think I'm this and that. And I had to always come back to that of like, I know that I'm not creepy. I know that I'm not trying to like manipulate or get anything from her. And holding strong with that was really helpful, because like, I have zero control in how anyone perceives me.
Yeah. I think that's really good. It's like that thinking part of my brain, wants to like figure everything out in a secret private room where nobody can see me or judge whether it's good or bad, and then like have everything perfect and ready to go, right? But it doesn't work that way. It's like you have conversations and interactions, and they kind of have the biggest influence on who you are and what it looks like when it comes out,
Yeah.
I think that's good. I mean, I think it's not easy to, you got to kind of like, you got to put yourself out there. You got to face the uncomfortable part of things. But I think it's really helpful to have like a mantra, a one or two like statements to yourself or anchoring points that like help you not be in that overthinking yourself out of doing the thing that's good for you.
Yeah. Do you have any?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is just the framework like knowing what value creation is and how I think about the different types of it. It's like I was saying, it's like value creation is doing something good for people, right? And so to me, that means helping them to achieve some state of being or some alternative state or whatever than they are in right now. And the ways that I kind of categorize the ways to do that are functionally. I can help somebody. If somebody's trying to achieve a goal, I can help them get there faster or more effectively or efficiently, right? So it's like if this guy needs to carry a bucket of water 100 yards, I could pick up the bucket and carry it for him. I could give him something to give him a bike, right, to make it there faster. If I can help him get from point A to point B faster or more effectively, then there's like I can add value by just like making the experience better, right? So I could walk alongside him and like tell him jokes or tell him he's doing a great job while he's doing it, right? Mm-hmm. Just make it not be stressful and make it more enjoyable. Or there's social value, right? Where it's like giving him a better concept of himself or connecting him with other people who can make that job he's got to do more, more valuable to him. And then there's the informational. So I could like teach him how to carry the bucket in a way that's, so I like to like a kind of almost a grounding tool for me is like going into that place of doing good things for people that I care about means generally something that's related to one of these things. And so I'm like, what are those? What is he? And you asked me for like a one or two things, and this is like a big elaborate, which is not the right answer. But I guess, like right or wrong, this is kind of where I go, right? I think about the person that I'm talking to or working with and what they want, what they need, how I can help them. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's like knowing that I do that and I like to do that is helpful in itself, that I'm doing the right thing.
I was just thinking about the bicycle when you mentioned it. Like, what a cool invention.
I know.
You leverage your leg muscles to move faster than any human could run.
Bicycle is like one of the greatest because
so crazy.
It's got almost like no downside. It takes material to do it, but I mean, like a car obviously is amazing, but it burns fuel and it's got the, but like a bike is amazing. I used to live in South Philly and I loved riding my bike all around the city. Mm-hmm. And my favorite thing to do was just to go out for a bike ride. And I called it like a walking bike ride because I would like pedal at the pace that felt like I was just walking, going for a stroll, Yeah. It was just my happy place.
Yeah.
And you can make it a whole block in the time at a walking pace riding at the time it would take somebody else like jogging to me. Yeah. It's just the best invention ever. I agree.
It's one of those that's like, if you set up the environment, then you can do more within it, if that makes any sense. Like a human body is very well designed for unknown environment, right? Yeah. Like there's trees you got to climb, there's rocks you got to go over, you got to like hike up a hill. A bike is perfect for when you can set up the environment, like when you can you can build a road, then you can optimize past our human mechanics.
Totally. This kind of goes back to the analogy about business that I was saying. It's like I like to like take things one step at a time, and it's like when you're working with a business, you got to kind of get this picture of the landscape, right? It's like don't waste your resources finding the best bicycle out there if you don't know that you're going to have flat terrain for a period of your journey. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like get the lay of the land. You don't have to know every little pebble and rock and step of it, right? But if you know that you're going to have a few miles or whatever of flat road, then go pick appropriateness is like, really big deal in that. But that the vehicle choice is a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk briefly about, or not briefly, it doesn't have to be, about, so we both did this deep waters recovery experience. And I'm curious about your attitude towards this kind of work and your history with it. And just for people listening, it's like a very much, I mean, it's self-work. It's looking at your past, looking at kind of what has built you into who you are, and with a heavy focus on like early childhood.
Yeah.
And so the way that they come at this is it's very intense and very much like confronting things that have been holding you down.
I look at it like, I think that the work that we did in deep waters, I think there's like a very small percentage of the population that would not find great value in it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I was thinking about that, and I 100% agree that like everyone's going to get something from that.
Yeah, I think so too. It's like, and because I like that explanation that like we learn, you know, as kids, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, you know, and it's like, there's this, it's almost tough, right? Because I'm doing this work on myself to process the trauma of, you know, how things affected me that happened a lot in my childhood, right? So, you know, knowing that I'm kind of like wanting to like improve my life and be the best I can out of that stuff. But at the same time, I'm almost in, it's very difficult to remove any of that from a childhood experience, because it's just, to me, it's like when you're growing up, you pick up behaviors and ways of doing things. You conform to the people that you're around, right? It's culturally. Like there was somebody in our group, right, that had very strong cultural influence, and it's like I'm a very kind of I'm very observant of the universe. I'm fascinated by just being alive on this planet and seeing all the different things that are included in that, you know. And I look at like the full range is interesting and is a gift, is as bad as it might seem, even, and it always great, right? But as a kid, you get kind of influenced that whatever that culture is, whatever style and characteristics your parents and your influencers had, and whatever that looks like, right? But as you get and you kind of get that hoisted upon you because you have no other choice as a kid. But as you go through the stages of life, you kind of identify yourself with that, because as you're a teen, it's like, this is, you know, that's just me. You don't have the mental ability to like differentiate. But then as you go further on, then you kind of do have more of an ability to say like, well, what's really true of me and of separating that stuff. So it's like, I almost think of it like the people that maybe wouldn't get something out of a weekend, or like had perfect congruence between their environment, how their parents chose to raise them, the style, the characteristics, and their true essence as a person, right? And I mean, it's like, that's either a luck thing probably in a lot of cases, or like exceptional parenting. You know?
Yeah, it seems almost impossible that you would have that, because like you were talking about raising kids, like there's so much you can do, but there's also
there's just all these like kind of like necessary evils about it. It's like, you know, there's kind of indoctrination with vocabulary is kind of a topic of conversation socially these days in the US, right? Like, don't say this, say it like that, you know, and political correctness, although I don't really like that term, and really I think it's something people use in different ways and mean different things, but like I have to. What am I going to do with my children? Not like refuse to teach them the language that I use to describe things, you know? So it's this like, I don't know, I found in life it's kind of this, you can't manufacture all that. So you just have to live your life the best that you can and love your kids, and, you know, just have good intention about that, right? I want having good awareness of the type of person they are and what's going to be the best for them to grow up, and then care about them and love them enough so that those intentions come out in how you know, how you're raising them. But, you know, that language thing is a good example, and like the culture is another. Like, I can't help but, I mean, we sometimes we travel internationally, so it's kind of like get exposure to different things, but, you know, you can't help but indoctrinate them with some things. And getting back to the deep waters experience, you know, it's like, to me, it's like this controlled, methodical, thoughtful, and deeply caring and considerate process of helping you to just have that look, helping you to say, yeah, what have I been through? What did I learn to do one way that maybe isn't serving me now, right? How do I like to make my way through the world now that wasn't the best way for me to make my way through the world back then? And so, it's like, what do I want to change? What do I want to not be a slave to that I've picked up along the way?
Yeah.
You see it like that? Kind of?
Yeah. That's kind of the exact way I'd see it. Is because like you talked about this, like you grow up, and when you're young you learn a lot.
Yeah.
And you learn how to survive in a certain environment, and then that changes. Like the environment changes, but then you hold on to those things. Yeah. And so at a certain point, like you said, you start to introspect. Yeah. And then
for me it was like, I remember I like, even through most of my 20s, I would see other people that seemed to be very like, it kind of manifested itself at the time of like not procrastinating, right? Being like waking up early and doing the project before it was due, like, and reading 20 pages a day for a week instead of all those pages in the last 2 days, like, I'm like, I almost couldn't relate to what it was like to be like that. And I was envious of it, but they seem to have it all kind of figured out. And like at some point through like some of the really tough stuff that I went through, like in my late 20s and early mid 30s, I just, something like internally is just like refused to continue living with using the stick versus the carrot on myself, and it was like, I kind of had to go through this process of changing the way that I related to myself, and then I kind of, I didn't the way I am now with like, I'm excited about my achievements. I'm doing what I want to do, and I'm like, I love it, and want more of it. I couldn't relate to that being a thing before.
Yeah.
It's like, you just kind of have to do what you're told to do, what you have to do. And the motivator that we have for ourselves is to like make ourselves do it.
Yes.
Yeah,
I can relate.
Yeah. And at some point I was just like, I'm not dying like this. I'm not going out having just like made myself do what I had to do in this world. Like, life's short, why not? I'd much rather be at the end of my days with a feeling of I did what I chose to do.
Yeah, I've been like the slave and the master of myself
definitely.
For a while.
Yeah, and
that's something I've been working on this past year, because I'm thinking about it now, and it's very like, it's things that don't like, that we're just not in alignment with each other. Like I used to like have this like running habit, and I had to do the certain number of miles every day or every week. But then I would like go out and drink a bunch on like Friday, Saturday night.
Yeah.
Because it was like, they were not connected. It was just, you have to run. It wasn't like, oh, I'm running because I want to be healthier.
Yeah.
It was, you have to run. Right. And then once the running's done, okay, fuck it, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that's interesting though, because I think it's like, things aren't as black and white, for me usually. And you just triggered so many thoughts. And like, I think there's a lot of, value and benefit to kind of what you're describing. It's like, I have to run. If you're in a routine of running 3 miles a day, and this, maybe something happened, like you had a breakup, right? And on Thursday you just don't want to run, right? And you kind of use that tool of like, make myself run. Then there's a lot of potential benefit that come from that, right? And like, I kind of do feel like it is our most effective tool. I mean, we are more sensitive to danger than we are like, Kahneman's like risk reward kind of curve. I forget, I'm losing some articulation power in the moment, but we're more sensitive to a loss, right? Than we are to a potential gain.
Right.
So it's like, it's powerful to be able to say, this is what you could, do this or else. Yeah. I mean, ideally, I think it's like we live in a utopia where everyone is only doing positive things, but that's not really the realistic world that we live in. That sometimes people are, I don't know, I'm kind of getting a little sidetracked with it because I'm hop into another thought about the whole thing. You really made me think about that. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking about on that topic, if you don't mind me just kind of like jumping to it, like another thing that I love about value is the concept of like intrinsic value and extrinsic value. So it's like the value in doing the thing itself versus the value, what you're going to get as a result of doing that thing or buying it, whatever. So with running, it's the experience of running itself and the what are you going to get from it, right? Mm-hmm. So most of the time, we run because we feel like we need to, right? But I find like when I'm trying to be disciplined with eating or exercise, most often like 3 weeks is kind of my turning point. I found that the first 3 weeks I'm really having to kind of like make myself do it. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I start to get that like the runner's high, and I start to like have the joy of the thing, and the sugary foods don't taste good anymore, and now the non-sugary foods taste better, and I like to find those things that are like a win-win between the intrinsic and extrinsic. It's like, yeah, like on the one choice, apple versus cake, right? Cake is going to taste better and the apple is not. But if you do kind of like go through the tough period for a few weeks, like the apple becomes the thing that tastes better. Mm-hmm. And then you have the win-win of doing the thing that's the experience you prefer and the outcome of the experience that you prefer,
Yeah, food is an interesting one because you can become you can like adapt your taste buds so quickly to in either direction. Like if you eat these like hyper palatable foods, then now normal foods don't taste good. But if you just eat the normal foods, they taste just as good as the other ones do at their height.
It's like when I'm like Jarlawn, I'm done with sugar, right? I'm cutting sugar out. It's not that long till I'm passing the thing before that I'm like, oh, like a donut is a good example for me because it's not something I eat on a regular basis. But when I'm in a sugar mode, the thought of a donut is like, I would love to have a donut right now. But when I'm not in sugar mode, I don't want a donut. Like I literally would not, if offered one, I would not take that donut, right?
Yeah.
Like if I knew that it would have no impact on my, just the taste alone is what I'm saying,
Yes. I had that exact experience. Like is it that you are entertaining it more?
In the
sugar mode? It's like you actually think about this thing and it becomes like a...
I don't know. I almost feel like it's as much subconscious as anything. Like I feel like literally if I pass like a donut shop, right? And it happens to catch my attention. In sugar mode, I'm like, oh, I would love to stop, donut. Just this almost subconscious like wanting.
Yeah.
And in the non-sugar mode, it's just like, it's just much easier to detach my attention to that thing, right? I'm just right back on the road. It's like, oh, glad, not interested.
Yeah.
Not interested. I think that's kind of like, I think that's a key phrase. Not interested. Value and attention are so linked together. And it's like, and this is why I love Atomic Habits too. Value is is kind of a subject of, it's like, you can't have value for something that doesn't have your attention. Mm-hmm. That's a different thing. Value is based off of, it's like intimately connected with how much of your attention do you have, right? And so if, you can kind of like filter where your attention goes with like the environment design and that kind of thing, you're just setting yourself up to value the things that you want to have in your life instead of you have to be in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's creating your own universe, which gets us kind of about the power conversation. When you're living in a universe that was designed by someone else, or unintentionally or intentionally, you have less power to influence it as you want, right? Because you're living in somebody else's world. Mm-hmm. But when you're living by intention in general and you're making choices to say, I don't want this thing around me, then you're living in your own world. So it seems to me that almost by definition, you are given more power, more willpower to have influence in that world, I don't know if it's like a result or like almost like the same thing.
Yeah, that was something I came upon a bit ago, is the attention thing. Like I realized that like your entire life is just moments, and each moment is all that exists for you in your experience is what you're paying attention to.
Yeah.
So your life is what you pay attention to. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else.
Yeah.
Like we can make up these stories about what else is happening, but
then you're paying attention.
You're paying attention to that story,
exactly.
And that's the only reason that it.
There's whole cities in Asia for us, or wherever, maybe Africa. I don't pick your continent, right? That we will never know exist, and never come into contact with, and never think about, never have any knowledge about. And so, for all intents and purposes, for you or for me, that city never existed, right? What's the difference between that city having existed and me never having any existential knowledge of it? Mm-hmm. There's really no difference from your perspective. Yeah, I find that so interesting. It's like, and I think that's a big factor in the it reminds me of the conversation about intuition and subconscious thinking versus conscious thinking. That the subconscious doesn't know anything about time. It's just here and now, always, right? It's just in this moment perpetually. And a lot of people, I'm coming to understand this now these days. But Rick Rubin?
I know of him. I haven't listened a lot.
I haven't listened a lot either. I've just been a huge fan of his since he entered my universe of attention awareness, right? I don't know, 5 years ago. But he's got a great podcast called Tetragrammaton, which I still don't really understand what that means, but I love it. He has this book too, and I heard him talk about it a few times. This connection with source and consciousness is something we still as humans don't really understand what's going on there. Where did consciousness even come from, and what is it? How does it work, right? But the concept that he talks about is this source of all information, and that we all have access to this source of all knowledge and truth. And I think that until somewhat recently, maybe a year or two ago, that was just a cool concept to me. But I feel over the last year or two, I have a developing relationship with the source, and I see it differently. I don't know. I just feel it's coming into my presence differently than it used to. But it's fascinating to me that there's just in the moment, everything just is. It's doing its thing. I think that has as an opposite to the thinking, always trying to figure stuff out part of the brain in some way. I don't know. This is a very interesting topic for me, and I'm discovering. I love having conversations around this stuff because it's a mystery.
Yeah, consciousness is completely a mystery. I've thought about this a lot. If you follow evolution, it's you could imagine a human that evolved that wasn't conscious, and it would do totally fine. It could live, it could eat, it could do everything, and just not really be aware of it. Mm-hmm. Like a robot or a zombie kind of.
Yeah.
And so then you think why did there need consciousness? Why did there need to be this awareness of yourself? Have you heard of the zombie hypothesis?
I don't think
this
so.
Is a weird one. So it's this idea, and it's for every individual person. This is for you only. The idea that every other person is a zombie is not conscious.
Yeah, what do they call NPCs?
Yes, because really you have no way of knowing if I'm conscious.
Yeah,
and I have no way of knowing that you're conscious. We just assume it because you act like a human.
Yeah.
I see me and you, so I just assume that you are, but I have no way of actually knowing that because consciousness is inherently and necessarily only experienceable from one side.
Yes.
Right. From the first person.
Right.
So it's intriguing. It's why does this exist? Why
it
does
is
that
really
happen?
It is really intriguing. And there's an Alan Watts book that I was reading maybe 6 months or a year ago, and there's a part in this that was I really love it. He was talking about how Buddhism and Eastern thought kind of has this built-in potential conflict to it. That it's so universal, but there's an element of it that conflicts with that. I'm a little confused, but anyway, the he goes on to say that like there's the universe at whole, and then there's the universe of you as a person. And when, there's quantitative measures, right? Like the size of the universe versus the size of you. But really, that's not like the most important stuff. The qualitative measures are really what drive us. It's like, how good is that thing and how important is it? And when you're talking about something like the difference between a bowling ball and a marble, they have different quantitative sizes, but like the roundness of them, the size, that doesn't matter, right? So when you're talking about importance with like a person versus the whole universe, it's a qualitative thing. The importance of your universe is just as important as the entire universe, because it's a qualitative thing, and I'm doing a horrible job of describing this.
It's a quality of the individual thing, and it's almost not even comparable.
Yeah.
I would say. Like, you can't.
It's like, it doesn't matter how big the universe is.
They're different things you can't even compare.
Yeah.
And also, like, each individual's conscious experience is its own thing completely.
Right.
Like,
yes.
Detached.
It's its own universe.
Yes.
Basically.
It is its own universe. Yep. And there isn't there's no concept of size even.
Yeah.
Like, you could measure my physical body and you could say, oh, you're this big.
Right.
But that has nothing to do with my consciousness.
Right. And
consciousness is not even attached to the physical.
And if you imagine kind of like extracting that from you, it's like, that's like comparing which universe is more important, that universe or that universe. It's like, it doesn't make sense to even ponder that. Like, they're both their own universes. So they're one's not more important than the other.
Yeah. What does your dream life look like?
My kids are the best things ever. They're the best. They're so much fun. They're awesome. I love them. And like, I guess, like, rather than answering that in the typical way you would think, can I just share a story with you?
Yeah, please.
Yesterday, as I told you, my daughter had to stay home sick from school, and but she wasn't like sick, right? She didn't need to be in bed. And I did tell my wife, like, hey, we need to make sure that we're not just, setting her up so that the perception is sick days are really fun, and I don't want to go to school because I get to do all the fun stuff that I want to do. But that doesn't mean, like, obviously we're not punishing her for being nothing like that. So it's just doing good things and like using your time wisely, But we had this like roast in the freezer that I've been getting around because I have this great barbacoa recipe that I like to use, So I took Lila for the first few hours of the day, and she cooked with me. She helped prepare it. We cut up all the ingredients, and she's amazing. Her like palate is way better than me and my wife. She can try something and be like, oh, that's pineapple and strawberry, or like that tastes like that. It's like blows my mind. I don't know how but so she was on her little stool, and we were cutting up and going through the ingredients and talking about them as we were doing it. And when we put something in, we were each smelling it and like thinking about it and having just like a pleasant conversation, spending time together, doing something that was only thing that existed and mattered, And it was also like interesting. So it was rewarding in the sense of like spending good time with her, but also like it was good for me. I was learning about her. I was learning about cook. I was, having a good craft in what I was doing, and we were making good food that we were going to get to enjoy later and feed everybody with, So I don't know. I mean, my ideal life is having a balance between my personal sense of growth and exploring new things and discovering new things and improving as a person and being connected and grounded as a person. My work, feeling like I've do something good, I'm effective at it, I'm rewarded handsomely for it, and I'm have a positive output to my intentional work effort, and my family and friends, that I have connection with the people around me, and that we share love together and we share the world together, and we're going through this whole thing together in a fun, interesting way, So it's vague, like that could look a lot of different ways, and I bet probably by the time I die that it will look a lot of different ways. But I feel like I have like plenty of those moments of perfection already in life day to day, so a little different than the question you asked, but
we're just enjoying those moments when they're there.
Yeah,
that's something I'm also trying to do more, is just like enjoy. There's a really good quote I like from Marcus Aurelius, where he says, I'm going to butcher it. This is not exactly what he said, but it's something like, a man should not fear dying, but he should fear that he never begins living.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to take that and like spend more time and just think about like, how can I just enjoy this life? Because life it's happening. It's already happening.
Yep.
So.
And I think it's like, it's like part of the enjoying of life is the applying yourself with intention, with purpose, it's like, I think I used to feel like enjoying was like taking.
Yeah. Right. Like you build up a reservoir of goodness and then you enjoy that.
Yeah. And it's almost like a selfish thing to enjoy life, but I don't see it like that anymore. It's like when there's intention and positive intention, and joy, then they just fuel each other, and it's like enjoying what you're doing. Cause I've seen it. I've worked with so many the best entrepreneurs and leaders, they love what they do. And they're invested in it, and it's work at times, but they're connected with it. They're like, this is what I do, this is what I'm good at, I love it, I want this to be successful. It's like they become these just powerhouses. Yeah.
Awesome, Andy. Where can people find out more about you?
My LinkedIn is Andy Reinaker. I'm on Facebook. I have a website, although it's transitioning right now to something better that talks about me at vsladvisory.com, which stands for Value Synthesis Labs. This is kind of like, and actually my previous brand for it was ValSynth, Value Synthesis Labs. But that's what I want. That's what I do. I like synthesize value in business, and so that's a place to find me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. This
of course.
is great. I appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.